Hello, my name's Gavin, and this is Genre Books, and we are now a few days into Horror Mayhem. And I want to give some ideas for anyone who may be stuck for inspiration. Specifically, I want to give ideas for anyone who has one of these, a Kindle, or any other kind of e-reader, because every author and book I'm suggesting today for Horror Mayhem come directly from Project Gutenberg. Now, I have a fair few physical books, but I do practice what I preach in this regard. So far this year I've read a dozen novels or books which come from Gutenberg. On a couple of occasions, sometimes where I've even owned a physical copy. If the physical copy is falling apart and I would like to keep it safe, I will switch between the two, read the nice physical copy at home, and take the battered old Kindle with me in my rucksack on my way to work. But apart from those novels, I've read dozens of pulp stories where I've been able to find them on Gutenberg. Sometimes I have to go elsewhere for them, but a pleasing majority of them are all in the one space. So, two disclaimers with this list: I've not read all of the titles that I'm going to talk about, and I'm also going to guess that you will have read some of them too. Then again, Steve Donahue notwithstanding, I don't think anybody could read all 50 of these within the month. Let's get the classics out of the way. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is on Project Gutenberg. But if you've read Frankenstein and you've not read The Last Man, maybe give The Last Man a go. It's the book of an apocalypse. It's possibly the first book of an apocalypse. I should imagine during a pandemic there was a little bit of an uptick in people reading The Last Man. It was a book that fell out of favour. It was never well received upon its first publication, fell out of print for a number of years, and it only takes a cursory glance at what happened to Mary Shelley between the publication of Frankenstein and the publication of The Last Man to see the reasons for the tone of the book. Dracula is on the list, and if obviously you've not read Dracula, Horror Mayhem is a great opportunity to fill that gap. But obviously, if you have read Dracula, there's other Bram Stoker on there. There is the Lair of the White Worm, and The Lady of the Shroud, amongst other works. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. I reread it earlier this year, and I don't reread stuff very often. In fact, I'm 90% sure it was a reread. I mean, the story of Jekyll and Hyde is so well known that it's possible that I'd not read it before, or read excerpts before. I certainly studied it before, but I enjoyed reading it all the same. Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu is well represented on Project Gutenberg. So you have Carmilla, In a Glass Darkly, the Purcell Papers, and plenty of other stories. Edgar Allan Poe, I would say probably synonymous with horror, and if you need me to list his books, it means that the YouTube algorithm has ceased to work. A more modern writer is on there as well, and one who a very different take on horror, or more sort of unease, and that's Franz Kafka. The Trial is there, Metamorphosis is there, but from two writers who are famous for a number of their works to a writer who is, if he's famous at all, just famous for the one, and that is John Polidori and The Vampire. But if you're going to get an Airbnb with Lord Byron, Percy Shelley and Mary Shelley, then maybe people won't be talking about you in 200 years' time. One that is on my list to read this month is The Beetle by Richard Marsh, and that is part of Roger's Cheap Old Book Club from Michael K. Vaughan. One that isn't on that list, one which I probably would have put on there had I thought about it, because I've not read it before, is The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. But I'm not a francophobe, don't worry. I have read The Horror by Guy de Maupassant. That's on Gutenberg. There are writers that when you first mention their name, horror won't be the first genre that springs to mind. However, H.G. Wells, The Island of Dr. Moreau, definitely would classify that as a science fiction horror. Henry James, The Turn of the Screw. Not only is it the most horror adjacent book that he wrote, but I would say probably also the shortest for all the you people scared off from Henry James. Arthur Conan Doyle's Tales of Terror and Mystery is on Project Gutenberg. Again, if you think Doyle, do you think horror straight away? Probably not. One which I would very much like to read, but probably will not get a chance to in May, is The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. As I won't get a chance to read it in May, maybe October, the run-up to Halloween, is a very nice substitute time to read some horror. William Hope Hodgson is well represented in the public domain. The Nightland, The House on the Borderland, Karnaki the Ghost Hunter, all works that are available. W.F. Harvey's The Beast with Five Fingers is on there. I've not read that, but I've heard good things. Similarly, The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs. Now, I believe this is quite short, so maybe I don't have much of an excuse not to read this one myself. As with Edgar Allan Poe and Franz Kafka, there are a number of writers where you don't have to list all their works. They are well represented on Gutenberg and are well worth your time reading. Washington Irving, M.R. James, E.F. Benson, Algernon Blackwood, E.T.A. Hoffman, Ambrose Bierce, Arthur Machen, and one that I only looked into when coming up with this list, who is a translator of old Japanese ghost and horror tales, Lafcadio Hearn. Hope I'm getting that name right. Weird Tales, of course, is a horror staple, and Weird Tales writers are well represented on Gutenberg. H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, Edmund Hamilton, Adolf Danziger, Murray Leinster, as well as his sci-fi. He also wrote for Weird Tales. Manly Wade Wellman, Fitzjames O'Brien, Seabury Quinn, and if you still have time left at the end of the month after reading some of these, then there's still plenty left to look at. Wieland by Charles Brockden Brown, early American writer, certainly on the Gothic side of things. The Monk by Matthew Lewis, Varney the Vampire by Thomas Peckett Prest and J.M. Reimer, and Varney the Vampire on their very long book. Shorter work is The Barber of Fleet Street. And if we're looking at the Penny Dreadfuls, then let's add Reynolds in there with Mysteries of London, or Werner the Werewolf. Or finally, go left field with something that not many people read these days at all, Luella Miller by Mary Freeman, or The Horror Expert by Frank Belknap Long, The Dead Smile by Frances Marion Crawford, Blood of the Vampire by Florence Marryat, To be honest, I could have made the list longer, but I would just encourage you to go and have a little dig around. There's something there I would suggest for anyone, and even if you have a full slate of TBR for Horror Mayhem already, some of these works are very short and definitely worth your time. When I edit this together, if I've only got 49, I'm going to be quite annoyed with myself. Until next time, bye.